We continue now at the top of Daf Vav and Aleph and Mesechet Shekalim. This is Shekalim Daf 6a. The Mishnah says, "Hamechanes mos." Let's say a person is gathering money, collecting his money towards the machatzis hashekel. V'yamar, and he says, "Hareelu l'shikli." I'm going to use this money for machatzis hashekel. Beishamai omrim, Beishamai say mosron nedava. That which is extra has to be donated, has to be used for the Beis Hamikdash. In other words, if the person inadvertently collected more than a machatzis hashekel, it all has the status of hekdesh upon it, has to be used in the Beis Hamikdash. Beis Hillel omrim, Beis Hillel say mosron chulin. The extra part is chulin. In other words, he's only saying that he's collecting for the machatzis hashekel. So anything extra is not going to be considered kadosh, and it's not going to be a problem. It's going to be considered chulin. However, sha'avi mehen shikli. Let's say the person uses a different language. He says, I'm going to bring from this the machatzis hashekel. He doesn't say hare elu l'shikli. These are going to be machatzis hashekel. He says, I'm going to use from this money to bring machatzis hashekel. So then shav, and then they both agree sha'amos or chulin, that the extra is going to be chulin, because there he never designated it as kadosh. He simply said, I'm going to bring from this money the machatzis hashekel. Mishnah now says a similar case, elu lechatasi, a person is collecting money towards the carbon chatos. These are for my carbon chatos. Shavin shamos or nadav. In that case, everybody agrees that the extra part is going to be nadav, is going to have to be used for donations in the Beis Hamikdash. Even Beis Hillel is going to be strict in that case, and we'll see why as the Mishnah continues. Sha'avi mehen chatasi. Again, if a person collects money to say that I'm going to use this money to bring my carbon chatos, shavin sha'amos or chulin. There, everybody agrees the extra is chulin, because again, you're just saying that from the money you're going to bring a carbon. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Now Rabbi Shimon says, Ma bin shkalim l'chatos. What is the difference in terms of Beis Hillel between the situation of the machatzis hashekel and the carbon chatos? Why does Beis Hillel say the extra is chulin by shekel, but he says by chatos it goes to nedava? Elo shel shkalim yesh lem kitzva. The reason is simple, because by shkalim there's a set amount. You're giving a machatzis hashekel. Well, the chatos ain't lo kitzva. When it comes to the carbon chatos, there is no set amount. A person can bring an expensive animal for a carbon. A person can bring a less expensive animal. There's no set amount, so that's why it has kedusha. Rabbi Yehuda says, Af l'shkalim ein lahen kitzva. It's not true. Even when it comes to the shekel, there is no set amount. Shekesha'alu Yisrael min hagola, because when Klal Yisrael came up from the exile, hayushoklin darchonos, they used to use these golden coins that were actually more valuable than the standard machatzis hashekel. Chazru lishkol saloim. Then they changed from darchonos to sloim, which also are more valuable than machatzis hashekel. And then finally, chazru lishkol taboy. And then finally, they went to use the actual machatzis hashekel. The reason was, it just had to do with how expensive karbanos were. So they had to raise the price a little bit at certain times. The Mishnah continues, Rabbi Yehuda continues, Bikshu lishkol dinarin. Then at one point they wanted to give machatzis hashekel of dinarin, meaning they wanted to actually go below the value of the machatzis hashekel, velo kiblu mehen, that they did not accept. In other words, you can make the price or the cost higher, but you cannot make it lower. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says back to Rabbi Yehuda, Afa bichein yad kulan shava. Even according to your argument, it's true that the exact value that's given can change over time, but everyone gives the exact same amount. It's not like one person is giving a little more than someone else. Aval chatos, but when it comes to a carbon chatos, zeh mevi besela, v'zeh mevi b'shtayim, v'zeh mevi b'shalosh. One guy might bring it, cost a sela, another one it costs 2 slime, another one 3 slime. So in that situation, again, it's really considered no kitzva, and therefore the extra is going to be linid. And so the Gemara says, Hamechanes v'chulu, again, it was talking about you're collecting money for the machatzis hashekel, so there was a machlokus between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Is the extra going to be nedava, or is the extra going to be chulin? And the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi b'shem Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Yossi says in the name of Rabbi Lazar, Ma pligin, what exactly is the machlokus between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai? B'mechanes protrot. When you're collecting a little bit of money at a time, and you're saying, as you're collecting it, this is for shekel. This is for machatzis hashekel. Avol ba'omer elu l'shkali. But let's say a person will pick up all the money at once, and say this money is for machatzis hashekel, and there's more money there than is necessary. Kalama modi sha'mosra nedava. According to Rabbi Yossi, in the name of Rabbi Lazar, everyone would agree that the extra part is linedava, Even Beis Hillel would agree in this case that the extra part would be nedava. Rabbi Chia of Rabbi Beiva b'shem Rabbi Lazar. Now Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Beiva say in the name of Rabbi Lazar, no. Ma pligid b'mechanes protrot. Again, what are they arguing about? Where you're collecting a little bit at a time. Avol ba'omer elu l'shkali. But the other way around, if the person would say, pick up all the money at once and say, this is for machatzes hashekel, kuli alma modi shamos chulin, everyone would agree on the contrary. Even Beis Shammai would agree that everyone would agree that the extra part is going to be chulin in that case, because again, if you picked up all the money at once, it's obvious that you only have in mind for the machatzes hashekel. So the Gemara now says, Amar Rabbi Chia masnisa misayil Rabbevi. He says, our Mishnah actually better supports the position of Rabbevi. In other words, that everybody would agree that the extra is chulin in a case where you pick it all up at once. T'tanan, because the Mishnah says, Amar Rabbi Shimon says, Ma ben shkalim l'chatos. What's the difference between shkalim and chatos? That by shkalim the extra is chulin, and by chatos the extra is kaddish. Ela shkalim yesh lan kitzva, l'chatos ein lo kitzva. It's because the shkalim there's a set amount, only up to machatz hashekel. By korban chatos there's no set amount. So what Rabbi Chia really is assuming, as we're going to see, is that what Rabbi Shimon is saying in the Mishnah is a distinction according to everyone, according to Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. We didn't learn the Mishnah this way. We understood the Mishnah that Rabbi Shimon is trying to explain the distinction between machatzes hashekel and korban chatos within the position of Beis Hillel. But right now we're assuming, no, it's according to everybody, meaning everybody agrees by shekel that it's chulin, and everybody agrees by chatos that it's kaddish, and we're trying to explain the difference. So now the Gemara says that seems to be a proof to Rav Bevi that everybody agrees it's chulin in the case that we had before, where you pick up all the money at once by machatz hashekel. Ma'onan kaimen. That's what the Gemara says. What's the case over here? In ba'omer sha'avi mehen shikli. If the case over here is where he says, I'm going to bring machatz hashekel, so in that case, everyone agreed by chatos and by shekel that it's chulin. Kolam amodi sha'mosran chulin. Everyone agrees the extra is chulin there. In ba'omer sha'avi men chatasi. Similarly, if you say, I'm going to bring my korban chatos, kolam amodi sha'mosran chulin. Everybody agrees the extra is chulin. Obviously, we're not talking about avi mehen, because that wasn't even a distinction at all between shekel and chatos. If a person collects a bunch of money and says, from this I'm going to bring, that's not a problem at all. The extra is chulin. Obviously, the case is that it's in this exact case where you're picking up all the money at once and saying these are for machatzes hashekel, and we're making a distinction and saying that by machatzes hashekel the extra is chulin, and by chatos it's not. So shkalim al yedei shekitzvasen min haTorah mosran chulin. When it comes to shkalim where there's a set amount from the Torah, the extra is chulin. Chatos al yedei she'ein kitzvasen min haTorah. When it comes to korban chatos, where there's no set amount, you could spend certain various amounts of money on a korban chatos, mosra nedava, the extra is going to be a nedava. So the Gemara now says, Ma'avid la Rabbi Yossi b'shem Rabbi Eliezer. So how does Rabbi Yossi explain this line in the Mishnah? How does he explain Rabbi Shimon? He's going to explain it the same way we explained when we read the Mishnah. Pasar la b'mechanes protero to kevei silo. Very simple. The line in the Mishnah of Rabbi Shimon is talking not about where you pick up all the money at once. It's talking about where you collect the money a little bit at a time, and we're just trying to explain Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says in that case, by machatzes hashekel, the extra is chulin, and that's different than what Beis Hillel say when it comes to chatos, that the extra is nedava, and so that's exactly why the Gemara is saying, or Rabbi Shimon is saying, what is the difference between these two cases, so you can explain it fine according to Rabbi Yossi. And the Gemara tries now another proof to Rav Beive, almost identical to the proof before. V'atanina, didn't we learn later in the Mishnah, Moser Shkalim Chulin, that the extra machatzes hashekel is Chulin? So the Gemara assumes again, we're talking according to both Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. We must be talking when you pick up all the money at once. This is a proof for Rav Beive that everybody agrees that when you pick up all the money at once, the extra is Chulin. And again, the Gemara gives the same answer, Pasar la, b'mechanes proterot u'chaveis Hillel. Again, that Mishnah as well is talking about when you're taking a little bit of money at a time, and it follows the position of Beis Hillel. And the Gemara continues, Hamafre shiklo v'savar shu chayev. Let's say a person separates machatzes hashekel, thinking he's chayev to give machatzes hashekel, v'nimtza sheino chayev, and it turns out this person actually isn't chayev in machatzes hashekel, lo kiddush. It's obvious in that case. The Gemara says that coin is not going to have kedusha. It's not going to be a machatzes hashekel. Hamafre shnayim. Now, let's say a person separates two machatzes hashekel. V'savar shu chayev shnayim. He thought he was chayev to give two. V'nimtza sheino chayev elechad, and it comes out he's only chayev to give one. Oso hasheni ma'ovidle. What happens to that second machatzes hashekel? Does it have kedusha or not? So the Gemara says, Nishmiena min hadol. Let's learn it from the following. Hifrish chataso, it says a similar case. Let's say a person separates his animal for a carbon chatas. V'savar shuchayiv, he thinks he has to bring a chatas. V'nimtza she'eno chayiv, comes out he's not chayiv a chatas. Lo kitcha, again the halach is the same, has no kedusha. Hifrish shtayim, let's say the person separates two animals. V'savar shuchayiv shtayim, he thinks he's chayiv two animals. V'nimtza she'eno chayiv elachas, comes out he's only chayiv one animal. So in that situation, what's going to happen? And we'll take a look at the gra over here. He changes the gears a little. Osa shniya roeh. So what's going to happen over there is that the second animal, in terms of the carbon chatas, is going to have kedusha, and you have to let it graze until it develops a mum. But hacha mayat avidle, what's going to be by shekel? Is that the same as the carbon chatas? In other words, by carbon chatas, if you separate two animals, and you only needed one, the second one has kedusha, and it has to graze until it develops a mum. What happens over here by the machatz shekel? And the graz girsa is Kamanda Amar Elul in Adava. You have to look at the Mishnah. According to the Mishnah, according to the one who says that if you have extra shekel, that it becomes Nadav, it has Kedusha. So Hachanami L'Nadava. Here also it's going to be the same thing. It's going to have Kedusha. Again, the exact same case. If you hold that when you collect money for the Machatz as a shekel and there is extra, the extra has Kedusha, the same is going to be true over here when you designate 2 coins when you really only needed 1. Kiman Da'amar L'chulin. Now, according to the one who says that that's not the case, according to the one who says that when you collect the money, it goes L'chulin, Hachanami L'chulin, here too it's going to be L'chulin. So in other words, the very same machlokes in the Mishnah between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai right in the beginning of the Mishnah, where again Beis Shammai say Mosra Nedava, here it's also going to be Nedava, and Beis Hillel who say Mosra Chulin, here it's also going to be Chulin. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots, quoting the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda said it's not necessarily a set amount, because at different times in history they brought different amounts for the Machatz HaShekel. The Gemara explains the amounts. Darchonos dinorin. The word darchonos means golden coins. Those were worth 4 times the amount of a machatz hashekel. Chazru lishkol saloim. Then he said that they moved to give saloim. Kishmu, and that's exactly what it sounds like. A sela is a full shekel, double the amount of the machatz hashekel. Chazru lishkol taboin, and then they started to give taboin, which is palge saloim, which is what we call the machatz hashekel. That's the regular amount that we refer to. And then finally, bikshu lishkol dinarin. They wanted to give dinarin. That's worth even less than the machatz hashekel. That's kartin. That's a quarter of a shekel. That's half the amount that is the minimum for machatz hashekel. V'lo kiblu alein, and they did not accept. They said you cannot go below the machatz hashekel min hadoh from the following pasuk. V'hemadnu aleinu mitzvahs loses shlishis hashekel b'shana la'avodas beis Elokeinu. So from the word of v'hemadnu, the idea is that they set a minimum. At minimum, we stand it at this amount. It has to be a machatz hashekel. Now the language over here is shlishis. You give a third of this shekel. What does that mean exactly? Now, shlishis means to say, again, in those times, at the time that this pasuk was recorded in Sefer Ezra, the shlishis was the way they referred to a machatz hashekel. But we have the following drasha from the pasuk. Rav Chilkiah b'shem Rav Acha. Rav Chilkiah says in the name of Rav Acha, Mikan shetzarich adam l'shalish shiklo gimel pamim b'shana. Now, many commentators say that this line is not talking about machatz hashekel. It's talking about tzedakah in general. A person needs to divide up his donations of the shekel 3 times during the year. You should make your donations to tzedakah 3 times during the year. Mikan she'in matrichan al hatzibur yoser migimel pamim b'shana. And similarly, from here we learn out that we don't bother the congregation to ask for donations more than 3 times during the year. And another drasha learned from this pasuk from the word shlishis. Amar Rabbi Avin. Rabbi Avin says, Mikan legimel soin, Mikan l'shalish kupos, Mikan legimel hafrashas. From here you learn out, again we said that they used to take the money 3 times a year. They would withdraw the money from the Trumas Halishka, from the shofaros, and they would put it into kupos. And from here we learn that each kupa, each box was 3 saw, that's how large it was. And there were 3 boxes, and they would do this 3 times a year. And again, from those boxes, they would then bring the karbanos tzibur. Just to clarify again, the simple explanation in this pasuk here in Ezra Nehemiah of shlishis hashekel is it refers to the actual machatz hashekel. The Ramban says that in those times they added on to the value of the coins a third, so therefore it came out that a third of a shekel was actually the value of what we call a machatz hashekel. And the Gemara here continues, Zeh yitnu kol over al pekudim. This is a pasuk from the Chumash, says everybody needs to give the machatz hashekel. Now the Gemara will continue to the bottom of the Amud to give various reasons behind machatz hashekel. Rabbi Yehuda of Reb Nechemya, Machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Nechemya. Chad Amar, one says, L'fi shechatu b'mechetzes hayom, since by the egel they committed a sin at midday, at halfway through the day, so yitnu machatzes hashekel. That's why the mitzvah came of machatzes hashekel, to give a half shekel. The Chad Amar, another opinion is, L'fi shechatu b'sheish shoos biyom, since the sin took place 6 hours into the day, yitnu machatzes hashekel, they have to give machatzes hashekel to yavad shisa garmisin. The machatzes hashekel is worth 6 garmisin, so therefore it corresponds to the 6 hours in the day. And 6 garmisin is the same as what we call 6 ma'os. Rabbi Yoshua bei Rabbi Nechemya b'shem Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yoshua from Rabbi Nechemya in the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Again, another explanation for machatzes hashekel. Lefisha avru al aseres hadibros, because at the egel they transgressed, they committed a sin against the aseres hadibros. So yenos and kol echad v'echad asara geira. Everybody has to give 10 geira. The pasuk says that a shekel was esrim geira, 20 geira. So it comes out a machatzes hashekel is 10 geira. Rabbi Birchia, Rabbi Levi, b'shem Rav Shimon Lakish, gives another answer. Rabbi Birchia says the following answer: Lefisha machru bechora shel Rachel, since they sold the firstborn of Rachel, be'esrim kesef, they sold Yosef for 20 kesef. Yeh kol echad v'echad podes beno bechoro be'esrim kesef. Therefore, everybody has to redeem his firstborn son esrim kesef. This is not a reason for machas hashekel. This is a reason for what we call pidyon haben. Rabbi Pinchas b'shem Rabbi Levi, Rabbi Pinchas in the name of Rabbi Levi says, Lefisha machro bechora shel Rachel be'esrim kesef, since they sold the bechor of Rachel, Yosef, for 20 kesef, v'nafa l'chol echad v'echad mehem tiva. Now it comes out, if you do the math, 20 kesef divided up among the shvatim is going to be a tiva, is going to be a shekel. Now a shekel of chol is actually a machatzes hashekel of kodesh. That actually is the machatzes hashekel. So every one of the shvatim got a machatzes hashekel from that sale. Therefore, everybody has to give a shekel of chol or a machatzes hashekel of kodesh. That's the reason for the mitzvah of machatzes hashekel, and we'll continue in the next video on Daf Vav Amud Beis.